Bore da a chroeso pawb. Good morning and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Environment, Regeneration and Street Scene Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of January 2023. Yeah, my picture's coming a bit clearer now. Oh, yeah. I'm Councillor Sean Percy. I'll be chairing the meeting this morning. And just to make everyone aware, the meeting will be recorded. As usual, can you please make sure your phones are switched to silent during the meeting and your microphones are muted when you're not speaking. I'm just going to check my phone as well. If members wish to speak or ask a question, could you please raise your electronic hands if you're on Teams or your physical hand in the council chamber, and myself and the Vice Chair will keep an eye. And please remember to use your microphone when speaking. For the purpose of the next... Apologies, members. That was just a fire alarm drill in the chamber. It normally comes on before we start the meeting, so it's running a bit late today. For the purpose of the next agenda item, which is declarations of interest, I can confirm we've chosen to scrutinise Cabinet Board agenda items 12 and 15, and also item 3 on the scrutiny papers, which is the budget proposals. But before we move on, I would like to call in Nicola Pierce, if she doesn't mind, just to give an update on the outcome of our Levelling Up Fund bids. Nicola, do you mind giving a brief update to the committee?
Yeah, no problem, Chair. We had some fabulous news late on Wednesday night, literally at 11:30 Wednesday night, which then filtered through yesterday, that we were successful in securing our left bid for the Neath Valley Heritage Corridor. So that was something like £17.85 million. It involves improvements around the Knoll Country Park, together with the area around the waterfall country up in Pontypridd Fechan. We've had problems up there for some time in terms of parking, because the area is so popular with visitors. So we've got a scheme that we put forward as part of that heritage corridor bid, which will hopefully address some of the issues up there and improve the actual visitor experience up in that part of the county borough. So it's fantastic news. We've got a huge piece of work on our hands now, trying to implement that before the end of December 2024. So obviously staff within the service will get cracking on that immediately, because it is a very short period of time to actually do the works, but it's a fantastic good news story for us all, and we are really landed. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent, thank you, Nicola, and I'm sure members of the committee would appreciate updates and further information as that sort of work progresses. I'm certainly really pleased to see the outcome as well. I know we put in 3 bids, but I think one out of 3 is great. I'm not sure any councils have had a full suite of successes from their bids. Do any members want to make any comments? I think Councillor Tim Bowen did want to make a brief comment.
Yeah, morning now. I'd just like to congratulate you, Nicola. I had 3 very excited managers speaking to me yesterday morning. One member of staff who was bouncing around my kitchen, who was so excited, since she's the longest serving up there. And she's been there from the beginning, since the building was opened. So she's looking at really excited about the future of it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, well done and congratulations, and I hope all goes well.
Thanks, Ros. I've got Councillor Freegard and then Councillor Penry. Councillor Freegard.
I just have to say congratulations on us getting that bid. However, I am really disappointed that we didn't get the bid for Talbot. And I just wondered, Nicola, did we put in exactly, was it exactly the same as the last bid for Talbot? Or did we change it, or was the wording changed? Can you just clarify that?
Yeah, no problem. We put a lot more information in as part of this round 2 left bid. So we had detailed architectural drawings or images, of the improvements that we were proposing for the Princess Royal Theatre, because members will recall the project included sort of improvements to the public realm together with a reconfiguration of the theatre to try and encourage more secondary spending and to link it to the square outside the theatre. So significantly more work went into the round 2 bid than the round 1 bid, but unfortunately we were still unsuccessful. But I can guarantee that the staff who were involved in those bids put 100% effort into ensuring that they were the best possible bids that we could submit. But as was mentioned earlier on, it was extremely unlikely that we would get all of our bids through. I don't think anybody, any other organisation or authority has secured more than one at a time. So we've just got to have a look at whether or not there are any other funding streams available to undertake some of the works within the Talbot bid, to see if we can secure any of the public realm improvements, if nothing else. So we're not giving up, Councillor Freegard. We're going to look at alternative funding streams to see what we can do to try and improve Talbot Town Centre.
Okay, thanks for that, Nicola. I'd be really grateful if you could keep us updated on that as we go along. Thanks.
Yes.
No, thanks, Nicola, for that response as well. I think it is also worth saying that the UK government have confirmed there'll be a round 3 of the fund, though again, as to whether we'd be successful in the second time, I don't know. But obviously a lot of work has gone into preparing these bids. We've now got projects ready to bid for funding, so that's also a good position for us to be in, and is something I know committee members have talked about for a while, is making sure we've got those projects worked up and ready to go. So I'm going to call in Councillor Penry and then we'll move on to the agenda.
Yeah, thank
Sheila.
you, Chair. A great congratulations to Nicola and her staff. I'm over the moon. You know, Pontypridd Ddechan, we were desperate to have something there, but the jewel in the crown is the Knoll to me, and I'm so over the moon that now we've won that there's money and that we can carry on with the Knoll advanced again. Thank you, Nicola, and to your staff. Thanks, Chair.
Excellent, thanks, Sheila. Okay, so we'll move on now to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members? If yes, please indicate, and Chloe will forward an electronic version of the form for you to complete. As usual, if something comes up during the discussion and you realise you've got a declaration to make, please just let us know, and we can deal with that then as well. I can't see any indications at the moment, but we will keep an eye out during the meeting. So I'm now going to move us on to agenda item 3 on the scrutiny papers, which is the consultation on the budget proposals. So the report includes the full budget proposals that are going out for consultation, but today we'll be scrutinising items in relation to the Environment Directorate. I'm not sure, we've got Hugh Jones here with us today. Did you want to add anything to the report for members?
Nothing to add, Chair, but as you just said, obviously we had a good airing in the Cabinet Scrutiny Committee yesterday regarding this report, and the purpose of bringing it here today is to deal with any issues pertinent to this particular committee. So that's all I wanted to say, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. So I've got an indication from Councillor Cathy James to start with. Cathy, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I can do. Just bring my notes up in front of me. My main concern is over the energy efficiency savings. So on page 10 of the report, there's mention of reducing street lighting and also reducing energy consumption in buildings, but there's no further details given, and there aren't actually any figures put against the savings, and this doesn't appear in the tables of the budget report. Given that there's an allowance in the budget for an increase of 50% in energy costs, so that's 2.78 million, but there's also a statement that the actual increase is more likely to be 162%, which is 9 million. That's a hefty gap to be filled by efficiency savings. So I wonder if there's any more detail available in terms of how realistic that is and how exactly we are going to do that.
Thanks, Cathy. Who did you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. That's a very good question. We've asked Nicola and her team to undertake an energy review. So that's to look at all buildings, all vehicles, street lighting, etc., and come back with some more detailed proposals in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So at the moment, there are no specific savings built into the budget report in relation to street lighting because we're waiting for that review to be conducted. You're quite right. We've allowed 50% increase within budgets for energy. We don't know what the actual costs are going to be for next year. They may be up to 162% extra, but we don't know that for certain. To mitigate against that risk, we've also allowed a £2.8 million contingency, which we're calling a Renewable Energy Transition Fund within the budget, which will obviously help to meet those costs if energy prices are actually anything like 162%. And as I say, we've asked for this energy review to be undertaken to look at all accommodation to make sure that we can do what we can to actually reduce consumption and actually make our buildings more energy efficient. We know we have to move towards a net zero target by 2030, I think it is. So obviously allowing this £2.8 million in the base budget, as well as the 2 million that's in the existing DARE, so Renewable Energy Reserve, will hopefully help achieve that as well. So I don't know whether Environment Directorate colleagues want to add anything to that response as well.
I can see Nicola's got a hand.
Oh, right. I haven't got my glasses on. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of what Hugh has already said, so he's covered quite a lot. We are undertaking a lot of feasibility work at the moment, so we're looking at all of our buildings within the council's ownership and control to see how those buildings are being used. Can we use them more efficiently? Do we need all of those buildings? So we have got a piece of work which is underway to see whether or not we can reduce the number of buildings that we have that we're operating from. And if we reduce that usage, we could potentially repurpose those buildings for alternative purposes. We are spending a significant amount of money on energy. Energy is going up. I think it's projected in the next few months to start coming down again. Hopefully that will actually materialize and we'll see a reduction in the price of energy. But it's about how we reduce our consumption as well as move into a renewable form of energy that we need to concentrate on. It's not going to be a quick fix because we need to ensure that we're doing the right things in the right buildings and not compromising the delivery of the service that we provide. So it's not going to be a quick fix, but we will do everything we can to try and reduce our energy consumption and try and rely on more renewable energy resources going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Hugh and Nicola, for those responses. Cathy, did you want to come back?
Just to say thank you for that. Presumably the proposals will come back to us then in sort of 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, that's great. Thank you both.
Thank you. I just a follow-up question from me in terms of the point around street lighting and who this was the one of the queries I had yesterday in Cabinet scrutiny around items that were mentioned in the report but not sort of itemised in the table. So I guess just for clarity, if proposals are worked up around street lighting, would they be considered for this budget that's being looked at now? Obviously, it's mentioned in this consultation document, but there are no proposals to actually get feedback on it at this time.
So if there are specific proposals around street lighting, we will bring them back to the Cabinet to consider, because obviously they will affect the whole council, so they will need to be scrutinised by the Cabinet Scrutiny Committee as and when those proposals come forward.
I suppose, are they likely to come forward in advance of the budget being set, or would this be a post-budget consideration?
No, it'll be something that will come forward during the financial year if and when we come up with proposals.
Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, I've got an indication now from Councillor Freegard. Sharon.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, following on from what the Chair has just said, really, about the itemised detail, and I may have missed it, so forgive me if I have, but I would have thought that this is an increased pressure on the budget, an increasing pressure on the budget about climate change, and I couldn't see any detail or any itemised things about, well, for instance, drainage. When we're looking at climate change going forward, surely this is a pressure, and that's going to cause enormous worries for us. And I wondered perhaps if there was a strategic plan or there is an itemised proposal about how we're dealing about this, because I don't seem to have seen that, and I can't see anything in the whole budget where we've had to plan for either increased staffing costs in dealing with our drainage system, or whether who we're working with. If we're working with Welsh Waters, where is the plan for that? If it's not there now, have we got one that could come forward to this committee so that we can track it as we go along? Thanks.
Thanks, Sharon. I was actually thinking about this yesterday evening in terms of some of the weather we've been having and whether the council will need to change some of its services, you know, in the next few years to deal with those changes. So I can see an indication from Nicola and Mike. So I'll call in Nicola first and then Mike, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are experiencing a change in our climate. You know, we're getting more rainfall events in terms of extreme rainfall events. So the amount of rainfall probably isn't increasing. It's just the speed at which the actual it's relating to the fact that large volumes of rain fall in a very short period of time, and that's when the drainage infrastructure is unable to cope with the volume in such a short period of time, and we get that surface water flooding. We are aware that some of our infrastructure in the area, in the county borough, is possibly not sufficient enough to cater for those volumes of water. We are meeting regularly with Welsh Water to try and establish where our pinch points are and see what sort of plans they've got, because some of the flooding events that we're experiencing in the county borough are not from our drainage infrastructure, but from the drainage of other organisations such as Welsh Water. So we are working with them to establish what their plans are going forward. Notwithstanding that, we have increased the capacity of staffing within the drainage section over the last 2 years. So we've got more people within the drainage section than we have in the past. And we've been putting additional monitoring equipment onto the sort of the strategic culverts that we've got. So those are the culverts that we are most concerned about, and perhaps Mike can give you a little bit more information on that. So we've got CCTV cameras on all of those culverts. We're monitoring them regularly, and when we know that there is a rainfall event coming, we ensure that we've got staff on standby to monitor the situation and to respond. In the recent flooding event that we had earlier this year, we had staff visiting those culverts before the rain started to make sure they were clear of debris and therefore capable of dealing with any water that entered that drainage system. But despite that, and despite the fact that they were visiting them regularly, we still had blockages and we still had flooding. So there is only so much that the staff within the street care service can do, unfortunately, is associated with the capacity of the network and its ability to cater for the volume of water that we are experiencing. I don't know, Mike, whether you want to add anything further.
Two things. Yeah, just to confirm, as you mentioned, under the resilience monies that was agreed at the start of last calendar year, there was an extra drainage gang put into the drainage team under the revenue budget. And the flood risk strategy and flood risk management plan, which the council has, the existing plan, which is being amalgamated into a single plan under the new guidance that's emerging from Welsh Government, that is due to be submitted to Welsh Government in October of this year. And so you should be expecting to see a revised plan coming back to this committee probably in the September board in advance of that submission.
Okay, thanks.
Can I come?
Those responses. Sharon, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back. Obviously, we've got the day-to-day things about the cleaning of drains, which is right across the borough, because they've got lots of leaves have collected on them, the extra rainfall, etc. They make them really difficult to move. So we've got the day-to-day, the short-term things that we need to put in place. But I was thinking about being proactive with the drainage system as a whole, with the culverts, the gutters and whatever. Obviously, that's going to cost us more money, and we need to be thinking about different things that we can do to maintain this going forward and in a proactive way. So, Mike, you're talking about those proposals and plans. Will they be coming to this committee, or will we be able to put things on the forward work programme so that we can keep an eye on things? And if we need to budget for extra things that we need to have, I haven't seen that detail within the budget plan.
I should have said, yeah, I mean, there will be a action plan associated with the flood risk management plan. We're doing that work now, so we can't bring it forward to put that into the budget. We have actually already got a significant plan with significant schemes, you know, multi-million pound schemes that we're getting grant support for from Welsh Government. That's ongoing this year, next year and the year after. So we've already got some big schemes in the pipeline, but you will get an overview, again, a refresh of that flood risk management strategy. And that will be coming to this board, to this scrutiny committee in September, in advance of us as a council submitting a revised flood risk strategy to Welsh Government, which is due in October this year.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. If you don't mind, I'll sort of perhaps ask a follow-up question, and this is maybe one for Nicola. But this discussion, I suppose, was sparked from Councillor Llwgad around the impact on, you know, climate change, etc., in further years on a very specific part of the service, talking about flooding. But have we got, or are we doing a wider piece of work looking at the risks that are coming down the line across all our services in terms of cost? Because obviously flooding is part of it. I can think, for example, if we get more snow, we may need more gritting capacity, more ploughing capacity, etc. Whether we get hot weather, how that might impact on our ability to deliver bin collections and all these sorts of things. Are we doing a review of services in the directorate, and what costs may occur in terms of some of these potential impacts? Obviously, I know we are looking at it from a net zero point of view in terms of what we need to achieve, but I'm thinking about these things that maybe we can't actually change, that we may just have to adapt. And I think that's what Councillor Llwgad is getting at, really. There's nothing in the budget sort of allocated to that sort of work. So I don't know, Nicola, if you can give any insight on that.
Chair, can I add to your thing there before Nicola comes back?
Yeah, no problem.
She can respond. For instance, the grit bins, we seem to be needing far more grit bins because of the icy conditions and things like that, which brings me back to looking at a strategic, proactive plan that we could perhaps see, and then we could look to see what the financial costs are against all those elements, really. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of the work that we're doing, we've got a DARE strategy, which is decarbonisation and renewable energy, and is focusing on how we transition to net zero as a council, which is what we have to do by 2030. Now, as part of that DARE strategy, we are currently doing a lot of work with the Carbon Trust, or we will be shortly anyway, to identify what measures we have to put in place to enable us to transition and the costs associated with them. And you'll see, I think you've chosen to scrutinise the audit report in relation to the ambitions of all the councils in terms of decarbonisation later in the meeting. Now, that strategy is not just about transitioning our buildings and our fleet to net zero. It's about impacting upon our behaviour associated with the way that we do business as officers, as councillors, and our communities. And it's also about identifying the existing impacts that climate change is having on our communities, and whether there are any measures that we can put in place to try and mitigate those impacts. So, as you said earlier on, in terms of flooding, we're having this week we've had a very cold spell, so our gritters have been out most evenings and all the way through the night. So we've got a rota of staff who are ensuring that our strategic highways and to a certain extent our other side streets are gritted. We appreciate that there will always be areas that we haven't been able to reach, but the staff are doing their best to get out there. We've got people, as well as the gritting lorries. We've got gangs of staff out there actually shoveling grit onto the side streets where they can. But I do accept that these extreme weather events are going to be with us because of our past behaviour for some time. And as part of any action plan that we deliver to align with our DARE strategy objectives, they are going to have to look at what short-term measures we're going to implement to try and protect our communities as best as possible. And we will have to cost them, and we will put those forward to the senior management team and to council in the future to establish whether they, whether there is any funding, additional funding available for that, so we can prioritise the work that we're doing in the council. But it's a long-term strategy with a long-term action plan, and we may not be able to fix everything, because obviously you just got to watch the news more or less every day. You're seeing the effects of extreme weather across the world, and unfortunately we're experiencing it within Neath Talbot at the moment, and we will do what we can to mitigate it, but I don't think we're going to be able to in the short term to address it completely.
Thanks for that, Nicola. I've got Councillor Bowen indicating next.
Yeah, it's just on a different note. I'd like to thank you, Nicola and Mike. On Wednesday up in Tomar, we had severe snowfall within about 3/4 an hour. And on a phone call to the street care team, they were up within half hour. We'd had 2 buses with all school children stuck. They were so prompt, professional. We were all out, and everything moved within the hour. And I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks for that, Councillor Bowen. I think I'll just make one brief comment, sort of wrap up this part of the discussion. And I think certainly from my perspective, an idea of what the risks are in terms of cost around remodelling some of these services would be a helpful indication, I think, for the committee to look at, in terms of, as you said, Nicola, we're not going to be able to do everything to mitigate all the impacts, but it's a matter of prioritisation, isn't it? And for example, if we had an extra 1 week every year where we may need to grit or use snow plows or whatever it is, there's a cost implication to that, and I'm sure there's many different scenarios where we could model based on our existing service provision and what the anticipated level might be in different areas. And I think that's what would be really helpful in terms of a forward look in the budget, where these risks might be come in, so we can perhaps understand a little bit about what those choices may be, what do we feel we need to protect, and where those risks might be coming. I think if that sort of impact could be included in those reports, if it's going to be included in the DARE strategy, I think that would be really helpful, even if it is just a variety of scenarios that may occur. I think that would be really good for the committee. Okay, I've got an indication now from Councillor Carol Clement-Williams. Carol.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to attend this morning. Just one question. Shouldn't the pressures for climate change be an actual line in the budget? And has anyone worked out how much extra they think that this may cost the council? How much extra has it cost this year, for example, if anything? Just a bit more meat around the bones on that one, really. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to attend this morning.
No problem. Nicola, did you want to respond?
Well, we've got our winter reserve within the street care team, so that reserve is pulled on when we do get these extreme weather events. So in the past, we've used it for to purchase salt for our salt barn, and then that goes into the grit that is spread on the streets. We've also used it when we've had an extreme rainfall event and we've had sort of a landslide in the county borough, so we've pulled on that reserve for that. Now that reserve is still there, and we renew it every year. In terms of that reserve is there for a reactive work, and I suppose what members are suggesting here is whether we put sort of a greater focus on proactive work. There is, as Hugh mentioned earlier on, there is that fund that has been put there to support the DARE strategy and climate change. So those funds will be used to do some feasibility work to identify what the council can do in terms of any sort of strategic work that we can do to actually protect our communities further and to enable us to decarbonise our operations. So, but that's not something we're going to be able to deliver overnight. It's something that we're going to have to commission from external organisations because we don't have the sufficient capacity within the authority to do that. But that's what those funds are there for. So we've got a reactive fund in terms of our winter maintenance budget, but we've also got that proactive fund there to enable us to decarbonise and hopefully enable us to prevent sort of the impacts of climate change on our communities.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just come back briefly, please?
Yeah, briefly is fine, thank you.
Thank you. So, Nick, as you know, when we have an extreme event, we are funded to the tune of, well, after the tune of £500,000 by Welsh Government, but the first 500,000 comes out of the council's reserves. And I think that the point that Sharon and Sean and some other councillors have made this morning is, and I know you haven't got a crystal ball, Nick, and you can't predict what's coming down the line. But when you see some of these events on the TV, you know, where areas are absolutely devastated with you know, it does make you wonder what kind of, are we going to have more frequent events, etc., in the county borough? And as you say, being proactive, I think, means investment, doesn't it? And should this be something, and even if it's not in the budget as a pressure this year, should it be something that we are looking to have as monies, not just a reserve fund for us to invest in prevention, etc. I'm surprised it's not in as a pressure for this year. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, no problem. Nicola, did you want to respond on that last question?
Yeah, I think what we need to establish first is how, you know, what projects should we be implementing to fix what problems that we are experiencing. So, for example, you know, we know that we've got a problem in the Melin in terms of we've got a strategic culvert down there. And more often than not, when we have a heavy rainfall event there, you know, that culvert is incapable of taking the volume of water that it needs to ensure that the surrounding area, it doesn't flood. We know we've got a problem there, and we have to track that back down to the source of the problem. The problem isn't as a consequence of that culvert not being invested in, because it is one of our strategic culverts, and we've got CCTV there. We have the street care staff visiting it on a regular basis to make sure it's clean. The issue that we have is that culvert and the drainage system it's attached to, the catchment area is the whole area above the Kimler, so going over to the Pontrydyfen area. So that rain falls up in that particular part of the county borough, and then it travels through our drainage infrastructure, and then it gets to the Melin area, and it just can't cope. So we have to look at how we reduce the amount of water going into the drainage system in the first place. So those are the type of discussions that we need to have with NRW and with Welsh Water to identify whether we can do any works up in the top of the Kimler and Pontrydyfen area to try and minimise the amount of water that's going into the drainage. So can we use more natural means of capturing that water and redirecting it to water courses and so on, or to try and reduce the amount of water going into our drainage network? So those are the sort of conversations that we need to have. We need to then identify what works that we need to put in to capture that water and prevent it going into the drainage system, and how much it's going to cost, because who is not going to write me a blank check for my directorate to deal with all these issues? He's going to want me to provide him with evidence of you know, what we can do, how much is it going to cost, and over what period of time we can deliver it, because it may be a multi-year project. So when we've got all of that work, you know, when all that work has been undertaken, we'll be in a far better position to identify the extent of the risk that we've got and the impact that risk will have on the budget. Hopefully that's answered your question in a long way.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, it has, and I know that that's only one example, because we have the same issue in Baglan where the Welsh water systems just can't work with the volume of water that the culverts are taking at the moment. So, but I do think it's a piece of work, and it does need to become a pressure ongoing moving forward. Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
No problem. Yeah, Hugh just wants to come in briefly on this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just, I suppose it'd be remiss of me to not remind members that we did actually put an extra £1 million into the Environment Directorate as part of the 2022-23 budget process, recognising the fact that you know, we had actually eroded the service resilience there. So as Mike mentioned earlier, that paid for extra drainage gangs, is paid for extra neighbourhood services. So that's actually something that was in the Environment Directorate budget for this current financial year, and will be there for, you know, it's in the base budget now when there are staffing posts. So I just thought I'd mention that, Chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think it's important to reassure members that those adjustments are being made to take those things into account. I can see Councillor Crowley's got his hand up. Matthew, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair, and again, thanking you for allowing me to attend this morning. I didn't think I'd have much opposition from my ward colleague, but I'm very grateful. Just to say, you know, every generation blames the one before. I know that's a cliche in terms of a song title that I think, I can't remember who sang it now, but anyhow, you know, Nicola, I'm grateful for your responses, but where have we been as a council since 1995? You know, Pontardafen has been in existence for, I don't know, the 1700s, Kimla, we come down the hill into the ferry, the 1800s. These infrastructures have been built on, and why I'm saying, not you particularly, but, you know, planning organisations, we are allowing developments to be built. Baglan, I look at in particular, I mean, it was allowed to be developed in the 60s with the same sort of drainage structure. And I know that planning has changed in terms of planning law, and SUDs have come in now, and the new development of Pritsimons on the beachfront have got SUDs. You've got to have a climbing gear to get into them houses now. That's the problem. They're so high up in the air to accommodate the SUD strategy. But I get it. But what I'm saying is, this authority have been awash with money at times, and these projects should have been done. I don't know nothing about culverts. I know about watercourse and how it works. But at the end of the day, I mean, a simple solution for me, and far be it for me, as I'm not a water drainage engineer, would be possibly to put more culverts in up the line to try and reduce it in some sort of capacity. I get it. But, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, we are where we are. I remember going to see, as a young man, going to see when I wore a younger man's clothes, to see a man 40 years ago talk about climate change. I thought he was off his head. But by God, he was right. And we're in the midst and the throes of it now. But, you know, I get it. We are where we are, but these projects and stuff like this should have been tackled. I got a project in my area. I won't mention it in here now, but, you know, we just, as a former West Glamorgan County Council, ignored it. And of course, and the early days of this council have ignored it. And these things now, because the climate has changed in the way it has, we are now in serious problems with. I wouldn't move to the ferry now for all the money in China with the flooding and God knows what goes on. I feel sorry for them, but it's just an observation, Chair, and thank you for the indulgence.
Thanks for that, Matthew. Bear with me one moment. I'm just going to check with our committee officers that everything's functioning correctly with the recording. I think there's been some technical issues. Is everything working all right at the moment? Do we know? Okay, we think it is all functioning at the moment. There's just been a few strange things coming up on the screen our side. Right. So before I end this item, I just want to check that who doesn't want to add anything before we close.
No, nothing for me, Chair. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So I've got no further indications on the budget proposal item, and this report is for information purposes, so therefore we note the report. So we will now move to the Cabinet Board agenda for pre-decision scrutiny. So as I mentioned at the start, we've decided to scrutinise items 12 and 15 on the Cabinet Board agenda. So item 12 is the Audit Wales National Study Net Zero Decarbonisation Baseline Review. So the report is for information on pages 99 to 104 of the Cabinet Board papers. Officers, did you want to add anything to this report before we go to questions?
Nothing to add, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. So I have an indication here from Councillor Cathy James on this report. Cathy.
Thanks, Chair. Generally, I think the report's really positive, and it's good to see that there's a good plan of action and way forward there. My question is on the timings. On page, I think, yeah, page 100, it indicates that the updated DARE strategy and the Net Zero Carbon 2030 Action Plan are both planned for 2023. I wonder if it's possible to provide any slightly more precise dates than just at some point this year.
Yeah, I mean, as you're aware, the DARE strategy has been in place for a couple of years. We recently commissioned the bridging report, which sort of identifies the gaps between where we are with the DARE strategy and where we are with our net zero 2030 requirements. And the next step for us now is to undertake some work with the Carbon Trust to commission an action plan. That action plan will be fully costed. We'll be looking, I think the setup meeting for that is on the 2nd of Feb. They're anticipating at the moment that that could be a 12-month process. Obviously, if we can bring that forward, we will do, and there will be work ongoing in the interim anyway, with the bits and pieces that we know already. But that will probably, as I say, take us probably through 2023, I should think. In terms of the revision of the DARE strategy, we have a very, very small energy team, and we probably will need some additional resource to look at reviewing the net zero, the DARE strategy, but also to help us really with the implementation of some of the net zero work over the next couple of years. So Kerry and I have been discussing this over the last month or two, and we'll be looking to potentially recruit a couple of additional officers to deal with that going forward.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Cathy, did you want to come back?
Yeah, no, thanks, Simon. And I understand fully the staffing pressures and everything. It's more from our point of view that we're not chasing you for something which just isn't expected until the end of the year. That's fine. Because I noticed the DARE strategy, that's on the forward work programme for April, I think. So will that just be a sort of an update of how the update's going?
Yeah.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Thanks. I think in terms of the interesting thing from this report is the operational service delivery bit of that action plan. I think is the interesting bit from my perspective as something additional to what we've seen previously. And I think I'm sure the rest of the committee would be quite interested to see the detail there, because that is the practical nuts and bolts way we're going to implement this strategy, isn't it? So yeah. I'd certainly look forward to seeing that report in the committee. I have an indication now from Councillor Clement Williams, from Carol. Carol.
Thanks, Chair. Just very briefly, it was mentioned in scrutiny yesterday about using acronyms in meetings for public that may be listening in, new people to listening to council, journalists, etc. So just a reminder that they may not know what the DARE strategy is and things like that. So just a reminder again about using acronyms in meetings. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Carol. I think as chair, perhaps I can make a bit of effort to expand those where I can. So it's the decarbonisation and renewable energy strategy, DARE.
It is. My apologies.
That's okay. No worries. Thank you.
Do we have any other indications, any other questions or queries from members on the net zero decarbonisation baseline review report before we move on? I can't see any indications there. So again, this report is just for information. Therefore, we just note this report. So I now move members back to the scrutiny agenda. So we've now completed the pre-decision scrutiny of our public items. The next item is urgent items, and I have none for today's meeting. So we now need to move on to agenda item 6, which is access to meetings. We have one private item that members wish to scrutinise. So are members in agreement to move into private session? I propose this. Could I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. So members, if you don't indicate to the contrary by raising your hands, I will assume you're in favour of moving into private session. Carol, do you mind popping your hand down on Teams? I can see it's still up. Thank you.
I can see no indication to the contrary, Chair.
Excellent. Chloe, can you confirm the recording stopped and any public or press have left